I was never the kind of man to talk much about feelings. I spent most of my life working, raising kids, fixing things around the house and going to bed early. I believed in God, yes, but quietly. I went to church when my wife asked me to, bowed my head at meals, and figured that was enough. But after she passed away 2 winters ago, the house turned cold in more ways than one. The quiet became unbearable. Her chair by the window stayed untouched, and the smell of her perfume slowly faded from the pillows. I stopped talking to people. I stopped praying. I wasn't angry at God. I just didn't know if he was still listening, or if he ever had been. That night, I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling. The clock read 2:17 a.m. My old dog, Benny, was snoring gently on the floor. The world outside was so still, it felt like time had paused. I turned my face toward the dark ceiling and, without thinking too hard, whispered, "If you're real, if you're still with me, please just give me a sign." I didn't expect anything. I truly didn't. But right after I said those words, something strange happened. The silence got deeper, not quieter, deeper, like every sound in the world had been sucked out. No wind, no dog snoring, no hum from the old refrigerator down the hall. It was as if the world was holding its breath. I sat up slowly, suddenly wide awake. There was a weight in the air, but not a heavy weight, more like something sacred had entered the room. I looked around, half expecting to see nothing, and for a moment that's exactly what I saw. Nothing. Just shadows, just silence. But I felt something, stronger than anything I'd ever felt in church, stronger than anything I'd felt when holding my newborn daughter. It was a peace I couldn't explain, mixed with the sense that I wasn't alone. "Who's there?" I asked aloud, my voice trembling just a little. No answer, but something deep inside me whispered back, "Be still." I didn't know what to make of it. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something else. Anticipation, reverence. It's hard to describe, but I remember thinking something's about to happen. I looked at the clock again, 2:21 a.m. Only 4 minutes had passed, but it felt like I'd stepped out of time completely. And in that quiet, sacred moment, I knew my life was about to change. I didn't know how or why. I only knew that God had heard me, and someone was coming. Before I tell you what I saw next, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? Which city? Which country? Leave it in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Because if you're listening to this before sleep, I believe your faith is about to grow stronger, just like mine did. The strange silence lingered in my room, like a heavy blanket wrapped around every wall, every corner. Benny, my dog, hadn't moved. He usually twitched or snored softly in his sleep, but now he was completely still, like a statue. I stared at him for a moment, unsure if he was breathing. He was, but very gently, almost like he too was caught in whatever was happening. I stood up from my bed, slowly, careful not to disturb the quiet. The air in the room felt dense, as if I was walking underwater. There was no sound, no ticking clock, no creaking floor, not even the usual hum of the heater. That alone was strange. My old house always made noise, but now, nothing. And then came the cold, not the usual winter cold that creeps in through the windows. This was something different. It wasn't freezing, it was a deep spiritual cold, like walking into an ancient stone church. Not scary, just sacred. I wrapped the blanket around my shoulders and stepped out into the hallway. The light from the living room was on. I hadn't left it on. I was sure of that. I had checked every switch before going to bed, as I always did. I moved slowly down the hall, my bare feet touching the old wooden floor. As I got closer to the living room, the feeling in my chest grew stronger. My heartbeat wasn't fast. It was steady, but louder than usual, as if it was echoing in my ears. Something was there. I couldn't see it yet, but I felt it. That same sense I had back in the war, years ago, when you know something is near, even if you can't see it. I reached the doorway and paused. The room was empty, But it wasn't empty. Do you understand? It looked like nothing was there, but the presence was undeniable. I whispered again, "Hello?" My voice sounded strange. It felt too loud in that holy quiet. I looked at the light switch. It was in the off position, but the lamp by the couch was glowing, casting a warm light over the room. That's when I noticed the picture frame on the table beside the lamp. It was a photo of my wife and me from our 40th wedding anniversary. The frame had always sat straight, but now it was tilted, turned toward the hallway, like someone had moved it. My knees weakened a bit. I sat down slowly on the arm of the couch, staring at that photo. I remembered her voice, her laugh, her faith. She would have known what to say. She would have told me not to be afraid. Just then, the air shifted. A breeze, without wind, passed by my cheek, and though I saw nothing, I felt someone behind me, close, watching, waiting. The air grew warmer. My breath caught in my throat. Something holy was in my house, something not from this world. And yet, it had come because I had asked. I stayed completely still on the edge of the couch. Every hair on my arm stood up. The presence behind me wasn't heavy or dark. It didn't feel evil. But it was powerful, so powerful that I didn't dare turn around right away. My breathing was slow, my hands trembling just slightly, and my heart, it wasn't racing in fear. It was pulsing with awe. You know the feeling you get when something big is about to happen, when you know your life is about to shift and nothing will be the same after. That's what I felt. The air in the room thickened again, almost as if it was alive. And then the temperature changed. The cold that had surrounded me slowly melted into a deep warmth, not just on my skin, but deep inside my chest. My eyes welled up with tears without warning. I didn't feel sad. I felt seen. I felt known. I slowly turned my head toward the hallway behind me. No one was there, but my spirit told me otherwise. I couldn't see the presence with my eyes, but my soul knew it was real. I whispered again, this time more softly, "Are you an angel?" I didn't expect an answer. But then I felt something I will never forget. A hand, not made of flesh but made of light, rested gently on my shoulder. I didn't turn around. I couldn't, not because I was afraid, but because I felt unworthy to look. That hand, it didn't press or weigh me down. It held no pain, only peace, only the kind of comfort that no human words can explain. And then I heard the voice. It wasn't spoken through ears, it came directly into my heart. 3 words, clear as day. I am here. I closed my eyes. Tears fell freely down my cheeks. I wasn't alone. For the first time in years, I knew I wasn't alone. I had thought my simple prayer at 2 a.m. would vanish into the dark, that God had forgotten me, that heaven was silent. But it wasn't. I asked for a sign, and it came. Not with thunder, not with lightning, but with stillness and light, and a voice full of love. I sat there for what felt like hours, though it might have only been a few minutes. That presence never rushed me. It stayed with me, silently, peacefully, and I knew, without a doubt, that something holy had stepped into my home. And even though I had nothing to offer, no fancy words, no great faith, I had simply asked. And that was enough. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know why this angel had come, but I knew my heart had been opened, and for the first time in a long, long time, I was ready to believe again. I didn't move for a long time. The touch on my shoulder faded slowly, like morning mist disappearing in the sunlight, but the warmth it left in my chest remained. It wasn't just physical, it was something deeper, like a quiet fire had been lit inside me. I sat there, my hands folded on my lap, staring at the photo of my wife again. Her gentle smile looked different now, as if she knew, as if she'd been waiting for this moment to happen. The room had returned to silence, but not the same kind of silence from before. This silence wasn't empty. It was full of presence, full of peace. I stood up carefully, almost afraid to break the sacred stillness. My legs felt weak, like I'd walked through another world and come back changed. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. I walked slowly back to my bedroom, every step feeling like part of something holy. As I passed by Benny, I noticed he was awake now. His eyes were open, and he was looking toward the hallway. Not at me, behind me. His tail wagged once, just once, and then he laid his head back down. Dogs know. I've always believed that. I crawled back into bed, pulling the blanket up to my chest. My heart was beating slower now, steadier. I looked at the ceiling again, just as I had earlier that night, but this time my eyes were full of tears. Not from sadness, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I whispered, "Thank you." I didn't need to explain who I was talking to. Heaven already knew. That night I slept deeper than I had in years. No dreams, no fears, just peace. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was streaming in through the curtains. The light looked different somehow. Brighter, softer. I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen to make coffee, but I paused when I saw the picture frame on the living room table. It was still turned slightly, still facing the hallway. I didn't move it. I didn't want to. It felt like a reminder that something holy had visited me. A few days passed. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even write it down. I just carried it with me, like a secret treasure hidden in my heart. But something had changed in me. I found myself talking to God again, not in long, perfect prayers, just simple words, honest words. One afternoon I was sitting in my backyard watching the trees move in the wind, and I whispered, "I believe you're there." And for the first time in a long time, I believed what I said. It didn't matter if I was old. It didn't matter how many mistakes I'd made. I had asked for a sign, and heaven had answered in the most gentle, unforgettable way. The next few weeks passed like a gentle river, slow and steady. Nothing unusual happened. There were no more visits, no voices, no glowing light. But the memory of that night stayed with me, like a quiet echo in my heart. I carried it with care, like a candle flame you protect from the wind. I kept wondering why it happened. Why would heaven send an angel to an old man who had almost given up? I wasn't anyone special. I had no fame, no money, no big story to tell. I was just me. But something inside whispered that maybe that's why it happened. Maybe the angel didn't come because I was important. Maybe he came because I was loved, because every soul matters, even mine. One morning, I was standing at the window with my coffee, watching the street. Nothing much to see. A mail truck, a neighbor walking her dog, a boy riding his bike past my fence. But something about that boy caught my attention. He looked back at my house as he passed, almost like he felt something. I don't know why, but I stepped out onto the porch. He slowed down, and I gave him a small wave. He smiled back. I hadn't spoken to a child in years. Most kids don't look twice at old men sitting on porches, but this one did. "Hi," he said. "Hey there," I replied. "Beautiful day, huh?" "Yeah," he said. "You live here alone?" I nodded. "I do." He paused. "That's cool. I live across the street. If you ever need help with anything, I can ask my mom." I smiled. "That's very kind of you. Thank you." And just like that, he pedaled away. I sat back down in my chair, the sun warming my knees. Something inside me stirred. That small moment felt important, not dramatic, not supernatural, but good. Later that evening, I remembered a verse from the Bible my wife used to quote, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some have entertained angels unaware." I wondered, how many moments had I missed? How many times had heaven reached out in quiet ways? Was the angel's visit the beginning, or just part of something much bigger? That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered again, "Use me, Lord. If I can still help someone, even just one person, show me how." I didn't expect a voice. I didn't expect anything at all. But I drifted to sleep with peace in my heart, the kind that comes when you stop trying to understand everything and start simply trusting. Maybe the sign I asked for that night wasn't just for me. Maybe it was meant to wake up something in me, so I could be a light for someone else. That thought stayed with me, like a soft melody in the background of my days, quiet, steady, and full of hope. It had been a month since the angel came to me, and though I hadn't seen him again, I still felt him. Somehow. I didn't talk about it with anyone. Not because I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, but because I didn't want to cheapen it with too many words. Some things are meant to be felt more than explained. Still, life slowly began to open up in little ways. One day, I decided to walk to the small church down the road. I hadn't been there in years. Not since my wife's funeral. The moment I walked through the doors, something deep inside me stirred. The pews were empty except for one woman sitting in the back. The air smelled like wood and old hymnals, and sunlight poured in through the stained glass windows, coloring the floor in soft blues and golds. I sat down quietly in the middle row and bowed my head. No big words, no rehearsed prayers. I just sat there with my eyes closed and said, "I'm here." It was enough. That night, I dreamed of the angel again. He didn't speak this time. He just stood in the distance watching me, not in a cold way, but like someone making sure I was okay. When I woke up, I felt a strange mix of comfort and purpose. It was like I had been gently reminded that I was still part of something bigger. Later that week, I saw the boy on the bike again. This time, he stopped right in front of my yard. "Hi again," he said. "Hey there," I smiled. "What's your name, son?" "Eli," he said. "I'm 10. "Nice to meet you, Eli. I'm James. Well, a lot older than 10. He laughed. "That's okay. You seem cool." I chuckled. That was the first time I'd been called cool in decades. "Want to hear something weird?" Eli asked. I nodded. "Sometimes when I ride past your house, I feel something peaceful, like the air's different. Isn't that weird?" My smile faded into something more serious. "No, Eli, that's not weird at all." He looked at me like he wanted to ask more, but he just nodded and said, "See you around." I watched him ride away, and I knew then the angel hadn't come just for me. He came through me, maybe to bless others, to be a light in a neighborhood that needed one. I wasn't sure what would happen next. I didn't have a grand plan, but I started leaving my porch light on longer. I began walking more, waving to neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. Not because I was trying to be better, but because something inside me had changed. I was no longer looking for signs. I was trying to be one, not in big loud ways, but in quiet, faithful ones, like the angel who came to me. Maybe now it was my turn to pass it on. The following Sunday, I went back to the church. This time, a few more people were there. I didn't know them, but they smiled when they saw me walk in. I chose the same seat as before, halfway down the middle row. I liked that spot, close enough to hear, far enough to think. The service was quiet and peaceful. A woman sang an old hymn I hadn't heard in years. Her voice wasn't perfect, but it was full of feeling. I felt my chest tighten, not from sadness, but from something deeper. Maybe it was healing. After the service, I stood outside by the church steps. An older man came up and said, "Haven't seen you around before." I told him my name and mentioned that I used to come years ago with my wife. He nodded, understanding. "We miss the ones we love," he said, "but sometimes they're closer than we think." That sentence sat with me all day. I thought about it while folding laundry, watering the small plants on my windowsill, even while eating dinner. Closer than we think. That night I went through some old boxes in the attic. I found a photo of my wife and I on our wedding day. She was wearing white. I had more hair back then. We both looked so young, so full of plans. I sat there holding that picture for a long time, not crying, just remembering and smiling. I placed it on my nightstand that night. As I lay in bed, I whispered, "I hope you saw him too, the angel. I hope you were watching." I don't know if she did, but I felt her warmth in that moment, not in a spooky way, just comfort. The next morning, something strange happened. I received a letter in the mail, addressed to me with no return name. Inside was a short note, written in neat, gentle handwriting. It said, "You are not forgotten. Keep walking in light. You are being used in ways you cannot see." No signature, no explanation. I held the paper in my hands and felt a shiver go through me. Who sent it? Why now? Was it from someone in the neighborhood, someone from church, or was it something even greater? I didn't know, but I believed it. Those words hit something deep. That same day, I baked 2 small loaves of banana bread, my wife's old recipe. I wrapped them up and walked across the street to Eli's house. His mum answered the door. I introduced myself and said, "Your son is a good boy." "Thought I'd share something homemade." Her eyes softened. "That's very kind, thank you." Eli came running to the door and smiled wide. "Hey, Mr. James." "Hey, buddy," I said. "Banana bread, the best kind there is." We all laughed. And standing there, on that ordinary front porch, I felt it again. That warmth, that light, not from the sky but from kindness shared. Maybe that's what the angel wanted all along, not to impress me, but to awaken me. That week, I started writing things down, not just the angel's visit, but the little moments that followed, the small kindnesses, the strange peace, the warmth I couldn't explain. I wasn't sure why I felt the need to write, but it helped me remember. It helped me see how much had changed. I no longer felt like I was fading into the background of life. I felt like I was part of something again. That feeling grew stronger the more I opened myself up. Every day, I found something new to appreciate. The way the sun painted golden stripes across my living room wall in the late afternoon. The smell of toast and coffee in the morning. A random smile from a stranger at the grocery store. Life hadn't become easier. My knees still hurt. I still miss my wife deeply, but something had shifted inside me. I had hope. One evening, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, Eli came over again. He wasn't riding his bike this time, just walking, hands in his jacket pockets. "Hey, Mr. James," he said, "I brought you something." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a drawing. It was a picture of me sitting on the porch, with a big, glowing figure standing behind me. "That's you," he said, pointing to the chair. "And that's the angel." I stared at the picture, my heart catching in my chest. The angel he drew looked strong, tall, and full of light, just like the one I saw that night. "Why'd you draw this, Eli?" I asked gently. He shrugged. "I don't know. I just felt like I should." I placed the drawing on my lap and looked at it for a long moment. "Thank you," I said. "This means more than you know." "Do you think angels are real?" he asked. I paused, thinking carefully. "I do. I've seen one. And I think sometimes we don't have to see them to know they're near." He nodded slowly, like he understood. "My grandma used to say that angels protect people who feel alone." "She was right," I replied. "They show up when we need them most." Eli sat with me for a few more minutes before heading home. I kept the drawing beside me. It was more than just a picture. It was a reminder that the light we experience can reach others. That night, I sat at my desk and added a new page to my journal. I wrote, "The angel came for me, but the purpose was greater than I knew. Through me, others are feeling that same light. This isn't just a memory, it's a mission. I didn't know what the next day would bring, but I felt ready, not because I had all the answers, but because I had something better, faith. And now I wanted to live like someone who had seen a glimpse of heaven. Quietly, humbly, but with fire in my heart." As the days turned into weeks, I found myself standing at a new crossroads, not one of doubt, but of hope. The angel's visit had opened a door inside me, a door I didn't know was locked for so long. I was no longer just an old man sitting quietly in his home. I was a man with a purpose, a man with a light to share. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I sat on my porch, hands folded in my lap. The world around me was peaceful, but my heart was restless in the best way. I whispered a prayer, not for answers or signs, but simply to say thank you. Thank you, Lord, for not leaving me alone. In that moment, I felt a warmth spread through me, deeper than anything I had ever known. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a presence, the presence of Jesus, the kind of love that never fails, never judges, and never lets go. I thought about all the years I had spent in silence, thinking maybe my time had passed, but now I understood. Time doesn't measure our worth. Faith does. It's the faith that wakes us up in the dark nights and carries us through the storms. The angel's visit was a reminder that God's love is alive and active, even when we don't see it. It's in the quiet moments, the simple acts, and the hearts willing to listen. I thought about the boy, Eli, the neighbors, the friends I had slowly begun to reconnect with. I realized that the light inside me was meant to be shared, to be passed on like a candle flame from one hand to another, because faith is not just for keeping, it's for giving. That night I opened my Bible again and read these words, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." I smiled, knowing those words were no longer just ink on a page. They were my truth, my guide. Before I went to bed, I picked up my journal and wrote a final note. I asked for a sign, and I received much more than I expected. Not just a visit from an angel, but a new life, filled with hope, love, and faith in Jesus. To anyone listening, know this: you are never alone. Keep believing, keep praying, keep trusting. The light is always there. I closed the journal, feeling a peace I had never known before. And as I lay down to sleep that night, I knew my story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a story of faith, a story of hope, a story for anyone who needed to hear that angels walk among us, sometimes in silence, sometimes in light, and always with love.